Okay, picture this. You're doing something completely mindless. I don't know, scrubbing a lasagna pan or just driving down a straight highway.
Mm-hmm.
Total autopilot.
Exactly. Your body is on autopilot, but your mind is somewhere else. And then, bam, out of nowhere, a thought just slams into your consciousness.
Right. It could be brilliant, the solution to a coding bug you've been stuck on for a week.
Or it could be a really vivid memory of a conversation from 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and this is the annoying one, it's that random worry about whether you locked the back door.
But the key thing is, you didn't ask for it.
No, I didn't sit there and say, okay, prefrontal cortex, please generate a simulation of a house fire now. It just arrived.
And that's a universal human experience, right?
Yeah.
But if you really stop and analyze that moment, it becomes deeply unsettling.
How so?
Well, if you didn't ask for the thought and you didn't consciously construct it piece by piece, did you actually think it? Or did that thought just happen to you? That distinction is exactly why I've been obsessing over this one's research stack. It feels like we're the authors of our own minds,
Of course.
like we're writing every single line of our internal dialogue. But the papers we have today, and we are talking about some heavy hitters in neuroscience and philosophy of mind, they suggest this sense of authorship is largely an illusion.
It's a very convincing illusion, but yes, the data suggests it's still an illusion. We're looking at research from, 2020 to 2025, covering the default mode network, philosophy of free won't.
All of it.
And the consensus building across these fields is that the conscious you, well, you're not the writer of the story. You're more like an editor.
Or in the case of those intrusive thoughts, you're just a confused audience member trying to figure out why the projector suddenly started playing a horror movie.
That is a perfect way to put it.
The confused audience member is going to be my new bio. This is the deep dive presented by NeuroReality, where we take these complex papers and, strip mine them for insight.
And today's mission is to deconstruct this authorial self.
So let's get into the mechanics. If I'm not writing these thoughts, what is? And where are they even coming from?
To answer that, we have to look at what the brain is doing when you think you're doing nothing. There's a stat that pops up in almost every paper in this stack.
I know the one.
Humans spend between 30 and 50% of their waking lives in spontaneous thought.
Mind wandering, daydreaming, zoning out, basically half our lives.
Exactly, half. And for decades, neuroscientists just dismissed this as noise. They thought the brain was, idling.
But then came the default mode network, the DMN.
And that changed everything. We now know that when you stop focusing on a task, your brain doesn't power down. It actually powers up. The DMN is this massive high-energy neural workspace.
I think most of our listeners have heard of the DMN by now. It's the network that lights up when we're not paying attention to the outside world.
Right.
But what I found so fascinating in the Gurn et al. Paper from 2017 was that they looked at the when, not just the where. They mapped the temporal trajectory of a spontaneous thought.
This is such a crucial distinction. Gurn's meta-analysis is brilliant because it breaks down the milliseconds before a thought ever hits your conscious awareness.
It's not just, poof, here's a thought.
No, not at all. It shows that a thought bubbles up through a very specific hierarchy.
A bottom-up process, they called it. It starts in the medial temporal lobe, so the hippocampus, where we store our memories.
Correct. The spark begins in your memory centers. Then it moves to the DMN, which starts weaving those memories into some kind of coherent simulation or narrative.
But, and this is the kicker, at this stage, you're still not aware of it. It's all unconscious processing.
Totally unconscious. It only becomes a thought when it hits the salience network.
And the salience network is like the gatekeeper, is that right?
I'd call it more of a relevance filter, a tagging system. The salience network monitors this bubbling stream of unconscious simulations, and it looks for anything biologically relevant.
So, is this a threat? Is this a desire? Does it have a big emotional charge?
Exactly. And if the signal is strong enough, the salience network cranks up the volume and shoves it through to the executive network.
And that is the moment I suddenly think, did I leave the stove on?
Precisely. By the time you think that thought, it has already been generated by your memory, synthesized by your DMN, and flagged as important by your salience network. You are literally the last person to know about it.
Wow. It changes the whole stream of consciousness idea. It's not a stream, it's more like a geyser.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure builds up underground, and we only see what breaks the surface. But that leads me to the Cole and Kvavelishvili paper, which talks about the content of those bubbles.
Because they aren't always random.
Not at all. A lot of the time, they're super repetitive.
This is the pre-made hypothesis. And honestly, it solves a major paradox in cognitive science.
Which is?
Well, constructing a brand new simulation of the future, is hard work. It's cognitively expensive. It burns a lot of glucose to imagine something you've never thought of before, like, say, a walrus playing chess. You have to build that from scratch.
Okay, yeah, I can feel my brain working just trying to do that. But if I think about my commute tomorrow, it's instant.
That's because your brain isn't building the commute simulation from scratch. It's just pulling a file off the shelf. Cole and Kvavelishvili found that something like 60% of our spontaneous thoughts are actually memories of the future.
Memories of the future, so plans, goals, worries, things I've already constructed and stored away.
Exactly.
So my brain is essentially caching these thoughts. Like a web browser caches a page to make it load faster next time.
That is a perfect technical analogy. It's heuristic caching. Your brain is an energy-conserving machine. So if you're anxious about a presentation next week, your brain builds that disaster scenario one time. Then every time your mind wanders, the DMN sees an opening and says, hey, we've got this high-priority simulation cached. Let's just run it again to be safe.
Which is why we get stuck in these awful thought loops. We're not rethinking the problem, we're just reloading the same cached file.
Yes, and the Jean-Amand paper supports this too, with their concept of direct access. We retrieve the fully formed thought without doing the work.
It's efficient, but it also makes us lazy thinkers.
Very.
Okay, so the brain is an efficiency freak. It recycles old thoughts to save energy. Got it. But that doesn't explain why it picks a specific thought at a specific time. You know, if I'm on the couch, why does it serve up a cringe memory from high school instead of my dinner plans?
This is where we have to pivot from efficiency to prediction.
Okay.
Because efficiency is the goal, but prediction is the mechanism. And this gets us right into the territory of predictive processing and the work of neuroscientists like Anil Seth.
I love this theory, the idea that the brain isn't a passive receiver of the world. It's a prediction engine, constantly guessing what's going to happen to minimize surprise.
Right. And we usually talk about this with vision. You know, the dress illusion, blue and black versus white and gold.
The internet fight that will truly never die.
The reason that illusion works is because your brain is making a prediction about the lighting in the room. You don't see the raw photons hitting your retina. You see your brain's best guess of the object, given the context.
Anil Seth calls this controlled hallucination.
Which is a fantastic phrase.
It is. We're basically hallucinating reality, but because we all tend to agree on the hallucination, we call it objective truth.
Exactly. But here's the critical leap that the Mukundan Ella paper makes. It's from 2022.
Okay.
They say we don't just hallucinate the outside world. We hallucinate our internal world, too. Spontaneous cognition, those random thoughts, arise from what they call automatic inference.
Automatic inference. So my brain is looking at my internal state, my heart rate, my glucose levels, my stress hormones, and predicting what thought would match that state.
Spot on. Your brain is constantly monitoring your interoception, all that internal bodily data. So if you're a bit dehydrated, your cortisol is up, you're tired. Your brain predicts, current state, bad. Therefore, the most relevant thought to serve up now is a threat prediction.
And it goes to the cache, pulls out that memory of the humiliating haircut or the unfinished work project, and fires it into consciousness.
It's a sense-making mechanism. The thought is a post hoc justification for the feeling. I feel bad, so my brain finds a bad thought to explain why I feel bad.
Wow.
And this gets even darker when you look at the anatomy. A 2021 study by Kolsch and his colleagues looked at the subdivisions of the DMN.
It's not just one blob.
No, it has specific functional zones. And the posterior cingulate sulcus, a key hub in the DMN, is directly wired into the pain processing pathways.
Wait, you mean actual physical pain pathways?
Yes. The dorsal posterior insula and the cingulate cortex. These are regions that light up when you, say, burn your hand on a stove.
But they also light up from a thought.
They also light up when you have a sharp, negative social thought.
That explains so much. You know that feeling when you remember something embarrassing and you physically wince? It's like a little stab wound.
It's not like a stab wound to your brain. It utilizes the same neural architecture. The prediction engine is hijacking the pain system to force you to pay attention.
It's saying, this social error is a threat to your survival, so I'm going to make it hurt so you don't do it again.
It's ruthless efficiency, but it feels incredibly cruel.
It does. I mean, we're sitting on a comfortable sofa in 2026, and our brain is screaming, danger, because of an awkward email we sent 3 years ago.
The software hasn't caught up with the hardware.
Okay, so let me try and put this all together. My thoughts are generated deep in my unconscious. They're filtered by a biological relevance tagger. They're often recycled from a cache to save energy. And they're selected based on a prediction algorithm that reads my body metrics and sometimes hijacks my pain receptors just to get my attention.
That is a brutally accurate summary.
It makes me feel like a puppet. I mean, if the algorithm is doing all of this and I'm just the user interface receiving the notification, where am I in all this? Do I have any control at all?
This is the existential crisis point.
Oh,
But don't panic yet. We just need to refine our definitions.
okay.
In philosophy of mind, and in this research stack, there's a huge distinction made between the sense of ownership and the sense of agency.
Break those down for us.
Okay, sense of ownership is the feeling that this thought belongs to, it's happening inside my head.
Right. It's mine.
But sense of agency is the feeling that I caused this thought to happen. I generated it.
And we usually just lump those two together. If it's in my head, I must have made it.
Most of us do, yes. But we know from pathology that they can come apart.
Right.
The Braun et al. Review highlights this beautifully with schizophrenia.
Right, with thought insertion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Patients have the sense of ownership. The thought is undeniably in their mind, but they have zero sense of agency. They're convinced someone else, an alien, or the CIA, put the thought there.
Because that mechanism that links the thought to the self-generator is broken.
It's broken. But now look at the inverse. Anxiety and OCD. If you have an intrusive thought like, what if I jump off this bridge? You have full ownership. You know it's your thought, but you feel zero agency. You didn't want to think it. In fact, you're horrified by it.
And that's where so much of the suffering comes from. People judge their own character based on thoughts they didn't even author.
They think, I must be a violent person because I had a violent thought.
But if you understand this prediction machine model,
You realize the thought isn't a wish. It's a hypothesis. Your brain saw a bridge, recognized it as a high-stakes environment, and ran a quick risk simulation to make sure you don't jump. It served up the thought to say, danger here. The mistake we make is claiming authorship of that safety check.
so if we aren't the authors, what are we? Are we just passive observers?
Not entirely. And this is where we have to look at the modern updates to the old Libet experiments. You remember Benjamin Libet?
The classic 1980s study, right, showed brain activity preps a movement before you're consciously aware you decided to move. It's always used to argue we have no free will.
It's the classic. And it's been criticized for decades. But recent meta-analyses from 2020 to 2025 have really refined the conclusion.
Yeah.
They suggest that while we may lack free will in terms of initiation, we don't start the process, we have what researchers are now calling free won't.
Free won't! I love that. So the power to veto.
Exactly. The unconscious mind generates the options. It bubbles up the suggestions. The conscious mind's job isn't to create, it's to select. It's the gatekeeper that says, yes, let's explore that one, or nope, that's a glitch, let it pass.
This connects perfectly to the Fox and Christoph paper on metacognition. They talk about shifting from being the author to being the steward.
The steward is a much healthier model. The steward manages a garden, right? They don't force the plants to grow. Biology does that. The steward just, prunes the weeds and waters the roses.
And if a weed pops up, an intrusive thought, the steward doesn't scream, I'm a bad person for growing this weed.
No, they just acknowledge it and choose not to water it.
That reframing it's really powerful. It moves responsibility from creation to maintenance. You're not responsible for the first thought that pops into your head.
But you are responsible for how you react to it.
And the neuroscience of agency suggests it emerges from that coordination between the DMN, the generator, and the executive networks, the monitor.
Exactly. When you actively engage with a thought, you are claiming agency retroactively. You're signing off on the paperwork the brain just handed you.
So the real practice then is to widen that gap between the pop of the thought and the claiming of it.
It is the gap between stimulus and response. In that space lies the only freedom we really seem to have.
Thanks for the suggestion, algorithm, but I'm not interested in the humiliating haircut of 2008 playlist today.
It sounds funny, but that is literally the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy. You're training the executive network to override the salience network's faulty tagging.
We have covered a huge amount of ground here, from the DMN's bubbling spring to the pain pathways of the prediction engine, and now to the stewardship of the mind.
It's a lot.
But I want to push this one step further before we wrap up.
I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
I'm looking at the notes on the Neurocognitive Foundation's source. We've been talking about the self as the witness or the steward, the one watching the show. But if the brain is a prediction machine that hallucinates everything...
Then isn't the witness just another hallucination?
Don't do this to me. But yes, that's the question.
It is the ultimate implication of predictive processing. We assume there's a little man inside our heads, a homunculus watching the movie screen of the mind. But the brain doesn't need a little man.
What does it need?
It needs a coherent model of the organism to function. So it constructs a model, and it calls that model the self.
So the feeling of being me, the feeling of being this continuous entity living behind my eyes is just another useful data prediction. It's a user interface the brain built so it can navigate the world.
Think about it. If you cut your finger, you need to know, I am hurt, so you can fix it. You need a centralized self-concept for survival. But that self-concept is constructed by the same networks that construct the visual image of the lasagna pan. It's all just a model.
That is terrifying, but it's also weirdly peaceful.
How so?
Because if the self is just a story the brain is telling, then the anxious self or the depressed self is just a story too. It's not some fixed reality. It can be edited.
Or, to use our earlier analogy, the steward isn't separate from the garden. The steward is just part of the ecosystem trying to keep itself in balance.
I'm going to need a long walk to process that one. Maybe I'll let my DMN run a few simulations on it.
Just make sure you veto the existential dread if it gets too loud.
I will do my best. Listen, if your own prediction engine is throwing weird glitches at you, or if you've ever felt that disconnect between ownership and agency, you should check out the papers in the show notes.
The Gurn and Seth papers in particular are mind-bending reads, and look into the free won't research. It's a great rabbit hole.
Thanks for diving deep with NeuroReality. I'm your host, wondering if I'm a writer or just a very, very confused reader.
And I'm just a hallucination. See you next time.
See you then.